Shibani Garat. She's joining in from the Bombay studios, from ET Now's Bombay studios. Shibani, tonight we put the spotlight on the direction that rupee is moving into, and that is only one which is downwards. In fact, the Indian rupee slipped to a new low today, 91 rupees against the US dollar for the first time. This, remember, is 26 paise lower than its previous level, and remember that the currency touched its previous record low just yesterday. The rupee remains the worst performing Asian currency and has in fact slid around 6% versus the dollar this year. But what is really leading to this fall is the big question.
Absolutely. So, continuing foreign outflows and a delay in the India-US trade negotiations are some of the primary reasons that are being cited. But for this drastic fall. But the RBI had earlier taken measures to counter the decline in the currency, such as revising FPI limits and selling several dollars in the forex market. But given this consistent decline, are more countermeasures needed to curb the fall? How long till the rupee will come in a steady recovery mode? To discuss all of this, we are joined in by R. Gopalan, who's a former secretary, DEA, and former finance secretary, along with S.C. Ralhan, president of Federation of Indian Export Organization. So rupee touching, all-time low. Welcome, gentlemen. But my first question to, Mr. S.C. Ralhan, is, while there is weaker rupee, typically benefits the exporting community. You have recently highlighted that sectors like textile and gems are struggling with 50% tariff, rising import cost at 91 INR for US dollars. Has the currency advantage for Indian exporters being completely neutralized by these high protectionist barriers and, the widening trade deficit?
Yes. Actually, the currency, the rupee devaluation really is helping the government, the exporters, to give at least some discount to the American importers to get some orders, which is, of course, is a scarcity at the moment. But sometimes it is not that beneficial because most of the exporters, they also import the things, and import bill on India is also very big. So that will also increase. So the point is, the other customers of immediately they will ask for the discounts. Rupee is going down. Please give us the discount. So secondly, very important is the currencies in the other countries, neighboring countries, Bangladesh, China, Vietnam, they are falling with a greater speed. So it may not be that competitive as if we are comparing with them. So, but as you said, yes, it may help the exporters to some extent.
Absolutely, Mr. Ralhan. Let me come to you, Mr. Gopalan. Mr. Ralhan essentially spoke about how exports are getting impacted. Of course, there is this understanding, and we've seen that from the data as well, which came out from Commerce Ministry yesterday, that India's trade deficit has narrowed. But when we speak about India's growth scenario, we're faced with a Goldilocks scenario. We have an economy that's growing at a healthy rate, inflation is benign, and exports have climbed up. But the currency is weakening. So how do you really explain the disconnect? And at this point, should the Indian economy, is there cause to be alarmed?
Okay. First of all, the reasons why this depreciation is taking place is something you outlined, like trade deficits, going up, right, and Trump deals, uncertainty about Trump deal going through, and the asset prices being up, and people want to book profits and go to other cheaper EM markets. And our FDI inflows have also, come down. So all these things have a bearing on the value of the rupee, and the uncertainty is the major factor that has pulled the currency value down. But it is something which was expecting to happen, and what we really now need to look at is how we will be in a position to, going forward, how will we be in a position to handle this particular problem. But that requires quite a good number of measures. But as we go along, I'll be in a position to explain to you that despite the Goldilocks which we seen, which we have, lower inflation and 8.2 higher growth, still the structural factors are such that they are not favoring the way the Indian markets have to grow. So that's basically the reason why these things are happening.
Mike, on that note, Mr. Gopalan, my question to you is, with reports suggesting, and also we've seen that there is no major intervention from RBI when it comes to, the rupee depreciation. So with, the central bank currently sort of testing the floor when it comes to rupee, what are the risks involved in this strategy, especially with such a volatile global market?
Well, if we do intervention, people accuse us of using crawling peg. Though we are, do the managed float, we do, but the way we do it, probably people think that we are looking into crawling peg. Is IMF has stated this. That may be one reason outside, but look at the amount of the RBI has really, thrown into this market. If you look at the gross numbers, people say it's around about $700 billion. The net has been around $44 billion has been the flow out of RBI into the currency market. So there is a limit to which, the currency can be handled, the volatility can be handled. Though RBI is committed to handling volatility, which they do by interventions in the market, but there is a structural factor which cannot, allow RBI to keep on intervening and the value going down. They'll only be chasing something which they cannot preserve. So I have a feeling that this slide will go on. Now it's about 5 to 6%. We are seeing that, though you said 5.45 is the number, but short term it's about 5 to 6%. Now it may go on for some time, but there are various steps which government needs to take and get it to the level where it will be beneficial. In any case, we find that these kind of depreciation, when they go, they always come back. The mean reversion takes place, and that will definitely bring it below 90 as we go along. But until then, there is uncertainty for the exporters and as well as for the importers, and for the markets also it's uncertainty. And this phase is something which I think we need to bear.
Absolutely, Mr. Gopalan, and that is something that we're seeing as far as the markets and, of course, trade in markets is panning out, trade on the Lal Street is panning out. Let me ask you one more question, then we'll come to you, Mr. Ralhan. Is there cause for worry for the Indian economy? Something that I asked you. You did tell us about the factors that are leading to this fall, but at what point will a depreciating rupee become a macro stability risk?
Let's not undermine our economy. Economy is really good. It's doing better than most other countries. But there are certain structural weaknesses, as I mentioned, which need to be addressed. Look at the industrial GVA. It's declining. Export of merchandise goods in the total exports has shrunk. Manufacturing job growth is sluggish. It's more import intensive. Core GDP is low at this point in time, which expresses that there is some excess capacity in the system, and money supply expansion has been slow. So these are some of the structural weaknesses which we are seeing at this point in time. Basically, productivity decline is a major item which we need to address. Of course, protectionism is there, but we need to see how we are in a position to do the supply chain. We are able to get involved in the supply chain, mesh with the supply chain as we go along, regardless of what Trump does. Then we should look at the inflows. Of course, that has got a way of looking at, in the sense that valuation of your stocks is quite high, and therefore people need to look at other markets where they can get better returns, and that is one reason. But that again is a function of number of things, as I mean, retail investors and others getting into the market. But once we reach the bottom of this depreciation cycle, I'm sure more money will get into this country by way of, I mean, FIIs and FPS getting money into this country. That will happen. And my view is that, I mean, as we go along this, we will be sub 90 as we go along. Once this depreciation uh, limit is reached.
Over to you, Mr. S.C. Ralan. If you can help us understand, how is Rupee breaching this 91 mark having an impact on the MSME sector that already faces, your 50% tariff and, of course, the rising cost of imported raw material?
Look, the question is the MSME sector doesn't import much, right? And I think it is beneficial for the MSME sector. It will be very helpful for them to gain the total depreciation of rupee. But the question is, since the currency is very volatile at the moment, you never know. I mean, a few years back, once I asked some economists, sir, can somebody in India or in the world can predict dollar? He said, nobody. Nobody on the earth can predict dollar. So the question is, if the money improves, if the Indian rupees improves, then what? Now the people have already started talking, okay, we will give 5% discount to US importers. But suppose the money improves, the Indian rupees improves, so then it will be a losing proposition for them. It is not a win-win situation for the exporters.
Right, Mr. Ralhan, and this even as the government has, of course, approved, the mission to support exporters, and in fact, that mission was approved. EPC, Export Promotion Mission, EPM, was approved in budget this year as well. We are awaiting guidelines from the government as far as that mission is concerned. But let me come to you, Mr. Gopalan. Mr. Gopalan, what Mr. Ralhan just stated is the fact that nobody can really predict the movement of the dollar, and we've seen only uncertainty this year. But looking at next year, when are you expecting any realistic stability in the rupee, and will having a trade deal, the US-India trade deal, how much of a difference will it make to the rupee?
Well, if you want us to predict, prediction is very difficult. Once the trade deal is stuck with the US, possibly many exports will certainly grow. Though the export loss is not so much, and we are finding ways to reach the other export markets, the export promotion mission should be in a position to help us. What we should look at is that as we go along, that we keep these newfound markets as they are and then develop those markets. And when we get the US market again, whatever rate it's 20% or 15%, whatever rate is, tariff rate is, we develop that market to the extent that we can, but keep a balance between the US markets and other markets so that in future we will be in a position to not to get into this kind of a problem. And because of focus on other markets as well as US markets, the sum total of exports will certainly go up. And that's very important for our country, because for our country, exports need to really go up. Merchandise goods exports really have to go up. Services are going up, but it has got to grow up further, and it will go. So what all things have to be done to ensure that the exports grow, merchandise exports grow very well, is something we need to focus on. As I mentioned to you, something to do with the productivity issues are there. Labor reforms has been done at this point in time. More needs to be done on land and farm side. More needs to be done on that. So, we have a agenda of items to be done, subject to political economy considerations. I think the government will take up those things, but this will, as we go along, probably there will be some end to this. I do not know where that will be, but and the mean reversion will certainly take place. And my personal guess is that it will be around 90. It will end up around about 90 or little less than 90.
Around 90 days is what you are saying, but at the same time, many are fearing that it might just hit or touch the 100 rupee mark. But let me ask you like a counter question to what my colleague previously asked. How much of this depreciation is a direct market penalty, according to you, for India's inability to close the former trade deal with US?
Yes, this has a great bearing on this because that introduces not only, reduced exports, but also introduces a lot of uncertainty as to what to do further, where to invest, which areas to now focus on. So that uncertainty reduces investments, right? So these are some of the things which, when there is an uncertainty, obviously investment will not flow. And when investment does not flow, how can growth take place? And especially export growth, how can it take place? So this is one of the factors, very strong factors, which has resulted in this depreciation at this point in time. But there are other factors which are medium to long term, and unless we address those factors, as I mentioned to you, we may see a repeat of this. If we address all these factors, probably we'll be in a much better off position.
Absolutely, Mr. Gopalan. You put that story into perspective very well, particularly with respect to this angle related to the US-India trade deal. Of course, it is something that the markets are waiting for. And of course, we here at ET Now also are tracking that story very, very closely. When that happens remains to be seen. But one final question, and let me come to you, Mr. Ralan, for that. Now, speaking about the exports data, you've spoken about the plight of exporters and the kind of pressures that they're faced with on account of, the macro and geopolitical factors. But how do you really see this data that the government of India released yesterday? The exports data or exports have moved up, and not only have they moved up, exports to the United States have moved up. And this is very different from what the September data and October data essentially showed. How do you really reconcile this, the fact that we have 50% tariffs, exporters are faced with 50% tariffs, they are under pressure, but at the same time, exports to the United States are moving up?
You see, for November, of course, the exports from India has gone up in the product market. But the question is, once the BTA is signed, which I fear, the dollar may go down because there will be flood of orders from US, and once the supply of US dollar goes up to India, I think the dollar may go down. It can also be, everybody is apprehending it will go right up to 100.
So I appreciate you answering. I appreciate you answering that question about dollars movement, but let me ask you that question again. How do you explain India's exports to the United States going up when exporters are faced with a 50% penalty?
It is not only the US. The people have already started going for finding out the new markets. Here. Of course, actually the importers in Russia, in US, those who have really their stocks are not over there with them, so they are sending the orders, not the otherwise. The buying is not that much; it's very nominal. Of course, the export from the country will go up by the end of this year.
Thank you so much. Thanks for those insights on Rupee touching the 91 mark. Thank you so much for joining us today on ET Now, both of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.